Welcome everybody to our latest transition webinar designed to help secure a sustainable future for your farm business. I'm your host, Johan Tasker, and as we say at the beginning of every transition webinar, when we talk about a sustainable future here at Farmers Weekly, we mean a future that's sustainable financially, not just environmentally, and that, as always, means profitable farming. In this webinar, we're going to look at ways to recruit and retain the best staff. Staffing is one of the most pressing issues facing UK agriculture, whether you're running a large estate or indeed a small family farm. And in detail, we're going to cover things like what employees are looking for, recognising where you as a farm business can provide flexibility, and the importance of investing in staff training and having a clear progression structure within your team. To do all of that and more, we're joined by no less than 6 expert panelists. So we've done our recruiting really well with unique insights into recruitment, retention, and how to make farming a more attractive long-term career. And if we get our retention right, everybody will be sticking around till the end. So to introduce everybody, Isaac van Heerden is Senior Knowledge Exchange Manager at the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. Tess Howe is Head of Partnerships and Policy at the Institutes for Agriculture and Horticulture. Alex Hardy is Business Development Manager at the School of Sustainable Food and Farming at Harper Adams University. Paul Harris is Founder and Managing Director of Recruitment Consultants Real Success. Karen Holton is Director and Dairy Farmer at Holton Farms, a 500-head dairy herd in Cheshire. And Andrew Palmer is Head of Agriculture at Lantra. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this into 2 halves. We'll do 30 minutes or so on recruitment, and then we'll do 30 minutes or so on retention. And I think to kick off, Karen, I'm going to start with you. As a farm business, how do you go about recruiting staff? I believe you've got quite an unusual and novel way of doing it.
Yeah, well, there's probably 2 ways. I'm very lucky that my herd manager is and now which is our local club, Congleton Rugby Club. And so when we're sheeting up, we have all the rugby lads come over and help with the sheeting up because it's a good exercise for them to keep them fit. And when they're here, they love the banter and we get them a breakfast and they're always like, oh, I'd love to come and work here. So we have them night milking. But because they sort of respect Dave so much because he's their coach, they do exactly what he tells them and they milk exactly how he tells them to milk because they've got so much respect for him. So that works really well. And none of them have got any farming background. Well, maybe 1 or 2 of them have had. And there's some of the guys work somewhere else in the day in a completely different job and just sometimes want a bit of extra cash and, you know, have got a bit of extra time to fill. And then another way is we've got the milk shack. So we've done on-farm vending now since, well, for about 10 years. So lots of people come and go there and sort of, they can see the farm, they see the animals, they see the calves, see the cows going in and out for milking. So people become curious and ask questions. And when you start to talk to people, it opens up a new idea about farming that they didn't have before. And especially since Clarkson's Farm's been around, they sort of ask lots more questions and want to be involved. So people, tend to find people, you know, get recruited from that really as well.
Thanks, Karen. So for people who might have missed the beginning of that, Karen, your connection's not too great. If you could just knock it down a notch, just the quality. But for people who didn't hear, Karen, one of the ways that Karen Holton recruits is via the local rugby club. Because the coach at the local rugby club works on the farm, and there's that connection there. And also, you're very, I guess, Karen, connected with the local community through the Milk Shack enterprise that you have. So that really opens up a great pool of potential employees for you.
Yes, absolutely. because people just want to, well, they're wanting to know where the food comes from now, but not only do they want to know where it comes from, they're actually wanting to get involved with actually the process of getting the food now. Farming's become really popular.
Thanks. Paul Harris, as a recruitment consultant, what sort of recruitment strategies are most effective in attracting top talent in what is, I guess, a competitive job market, especially for farmers who sometimes struggle to recruit really, really good staff for a number of reasons. Often the location, the pool of talent is not necessarily as big as it might be in for example, a city or a larger town.
So I think it was really interesting. Good evening, everybody. That Karen was talking there very much about the ability to recruit locally, which actually, if you can do that, and Karen's got this innovative way of getting rugby players doing sheeting up, is fantastic. Because if you've got local people, it sometimes means that you don't need to provide them with accommodation, which lots of farm staff do need. So that's certainly an innovative way of recruiting. In terms of how do you recruit, there's the technical side of physically what you do, and then you said, how do you attract top talent? Those are two very different questions, really. The first one, how do we go about recruiting? Then nowadays, social media is one of the ways that most people will have access to a national pool, and in some cases, international pool of people looking to apply. So we use Facebook a lot, but we use all of the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Indeed. We have a system that fires out job adverts to all of the job sites. So online would be the first answer to that question, Johan, is that most people are not going to read the local newspaper, or not going to read, even bless them, even some of the magazines that we have, like your own, like Farmers Weekly. Sometimes for bigger jobs, for big jobs like farm manager jobs, we would often use the press, examples like Farmers Weekly. But for a lot of the smaller jobs, it's the social media sites, and then we have our own website. But so social media is one. The second question, though, I think is almost the more important one, is how do you attract top talent? And I'm sure that's partly the bigger conversation that everyone can contribute to, and that's that's about a number of key things, from decent working conditions to working hours to training and development to decent accommodation to the way we communicate with people. All of that is part of the factors of attracting top people to your farm, and being able to interview effectively. Many farmers have never been taught how to do an interview, and an interview often consists of, hello, how are you? Are you vertical breathing and can speak English? I'm desperate. So when can you start? And actually being able to interview professionally, show people around the farm professionally, presenting your farm in the right way, enables you to attract sometimes the best people, because it is competitive. People have often got more frequently have got more than one job opportunity in front of them. So as a quick answer to your question, to let other people speak, on social media would be the place to start if you're going to where you want to start, and then all the things about making your farm look an attractive place to work, which I'm sure we'll dig into a bit more as we go through.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Tess Howe, TIA is an organisation which sort of, I guess, part of what you do is professionalising the industry. How does what TIA does? How do you ensure that, I guess, employers and employees are both matching up with each other in a way that's effective and is putting the right people in the right places, I guess?
Yeah, so I think it's important to recognise the industry's professional already. We're providing recognition for that professionalism, and really we're trying to look at how we can attract people into the industry, possibly from different pools like Karen's talking about, but really making sure that they understand what the job opportunities are and what potential they've got in the industry, and then supporting managers, because I think, just building on what Paul was saying, interview skills really important. Those managerial skills are really important, not just for the retention, which we'll talk about later, but building your reputation as a good employer, and that actually helps attract the talent as well, because once people know that you're a good employer, it's a lot easier to pull people through the door. So really trying to give people those skills and knowledge.
That reputation is huge.
Thank you. Sorry, was that you, Isaac?
Yes, and Tess's point there about the reputation that you have in the industry is a huge factor in attracting people.
So what can we do to get that out there as a reputational attraction? How do you build that reputation, especially among potential employees?
I think a lot of it is through social media and engagement through social media, showing what you do and how we do it. And also things like we did won Dairy Farmer of the Year last year. And we do lots of local competitions. We do the Cream Awards. We've been in that. So it's sort of entering things. And even if you don't win, just talking about it and showing it on social media. That definitely happens. And farm walks. We do a lot of school farm walks, educational stuff. We have the Cubs, the Scouts, vet students. We have Harper students. So just doing lots of things like that.
Can I just add to that? I think one of the things that Karen just said is really important, and people listening, sometimes when I talk about get on social media, have an Instagram account, have a Facebook account, have a website, engage with the public, people often say, yeah, but I don't want people to know I'm here. I don't want, because the animal rights activists might turn up at the door. And I always say, but they already know where you are. So we either then fight back and start putting positive messages out, like Karen suggesting, and that's how we're going to attract people in. If we hide ourselves and don't tell people what a wonderful industry it is to work in, then how are people expected to know about it, particularly from a non-rural environment? If I'm working in an inner city school, I'm never going to find out about farming unless maybe I see somebody on Instagram or Facebook talking about it. So, you know, I'm very passionate about us being brave enough to talk positively about our farms and our industry, and not being too scared off by the people who are trying to say we're cruel or not managing our farms effectively. So yeah, get out there and tell people would be my message if you want to attract people to your industry.
So sort of to a certain extent then, Paul, be loud and proud rather than hiding your light under a bushel. Isaac, I think you mentioned this idea of reputation first of all. Could you expand on your thoughts, please?
100%. There's a lot of the things that Karen have said there, but it's so I sometimes in a room and people say, well, Paul is just always lucky with the staff he gets. They never leave. And so no, and it is what you put out there, and the word goes around. So that's very important. An interesting way to look at it is, and this is from Laura Savage's Nuffield report, is thinking, taking the time to think why, what, and how. We spend a lot of time on thinking about the perfect candidate and how we're going to interview and all of that. So, what we want, but actually, put yourself in their shoes, thinking, why would they want to come and work for me? And what can I do to make that happen? So just reversing that and think, and actually, how do I make that happen? So can I accommodate them? Can I give them the weekends off, or can I do this rather than be so inflexible? Building a bit of flex and put yourself in their shoes and thinking that why, what, and how.
Thank you. And Andrew Palmer, I'm going to bring you in on the conversation. I mean, what are potential employees looking for?
I think for just turning, for really just want someone with a can-do and want-to attitude. Everything else can be sort of built on once that person's there. But once an enthusiasm to be part of what you are doing is a key element of it. I know there's a lot spoken about certain generational behaviors and things like that, but there is, once you've got that person, or you transfer that message or your ethos or what you do on your farm across that person, which goes across the interview skills as well, sort of thing, and again, a bit like Isaac said earlier on, would you work for you? Ask yourself first, would you work for yourself first, sort of thing, and if the answer is no, well, you've got a lot of work to do. So the building blocks, you start with yourself, then you start with your team, start with the farm, make your place attractive, and then that will sell a lot. Even I know a lot of work Paul's done in the past, sort of thing, just the visuals when the person comes to the farm and stuff like that. Is it a nice farm when they come in, sort of thing? Is it nice and tidy? It's not held together with bale abandon, muck all over the place, sort of thing. Create that image, get across that first thing. Then they'll think, oh, this is a nice place. And then it makes the next part really easy, sort of thing.
Thank you. Alex, you're Alex Hardy, you're nodding. So you recognise some of that, the importance of some of what Andrew said.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just picking up on what all of the colleagues are saying, really, and there are a few things to offer, I think. And so, I mean, of course, here at Harper Adams, we do have, you know, quite a well trodden, popular portal for people to advertise jobs. Sounds like Karen has made use of that before. So that's, you know, an easy way to find some good talent. But I just wanted to share that we did a piece of work in partnership with Leaf around about 18 months ago, which was looking at how we attract new talent into agriculture. And I think it was a really interesting piece of insight because, of course, we polled around 2,000 young people, primarily from inner city locations. And so not the ordinary stomping ground, you might say, for recruiting people to come and work in agriculture. But what we found actually was, having polled 2,000 of them and then getting more than 50 of them to the Harper Adams University campus, and spending a couple of days sharing with them what an agriculture career could look like, they actually told us at the point that they left, having had zero engagement with agriculture, that more than 65% of them told us that they would now be considering a career in agriculture. And that was everything from agri-tech to on-farm labor to a whole variety across the piece. So I think that, and just to pick up some more on some of what Karen and Isaac were saying, I think there's some really enormous value in our being loud and proud about our industry. Yes, to speak to the people that we already know, but also to speak to the people that we don't. And I think if we can do that really well, then we're in a position to be able to position the industry in a light where we can control the narrative and be really clear about what it is that we're trying to do as an industry. So I think that there's plenty that there's there to be excited about.
Thank you. Isaac, does the Agri Leader program that you work with, does that sort of fit in with what we're talking about in terms of leadership, and if so, how? Could you explain it a little bit for us?
100%. So part of what we what we're hanging the Agri Leader program on is leading yourself, leading your people, and leading your business. And the likes of Karen have been to the Agri Leader Forum, and it is that whole idea of saying, how do you communicate better with your people? How do you set that vision? So 100% that's what the Agri Leader do. We've also got something called the Labor Life Cycle, online resources looking at sort of the different stages of recruiting, retention, managing people, progressing people. And there's some online resources helping people to especially if it's your first step into it, and if you're just starting to employ people or things like that, it's a good sort of first steps. And once you move on, you might want to employ somebody like Paul, but I think it's a good first step to just get that basics and have a bit of a look at, okay, so this is how I write the role profile, this is how I advertise, this is how I interview, all of those kind of things. How do I onboard people? How do I make sure those first few weeks then it's good for them. So I think, yes, and there's something for everybody there.
And Tess, I guess some people will be looking for jobs. Other people will be looking for, as has been alluded to, for a career pathway. They don't just want a job and go and earn some money and that be it. They want to be able to see a pathway that they can progress their own personal development, their skills, and indeed their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things when you're looking at recruiting sort of the next generation is the careers influencers. So whether that be a careers professional or a parent, they have a very outdated perception of the industry. So when they don't want their little child coming to an industry where there is no progression. So I think as an industry, it's really important we are shouting about those different roles and how you can move through the industry. And I think actually the variety of careers and professionalism that you can have in our industry is vast. And it doesn't all just happen to be on farm. And there's an awful lot of industries that are supporting the farm as well. So the opportunities are there. And I think when we did our research on careers, the language we use is also quite different to the language of the next generation. And I think we talk about what makes us passionate about the industry and how that resonates with us. But actually the next generation want very different things. So when our research said, do you want a career in agriculture? They all said no. But when you said, well, what do you want to do? They all talked about sustainability and protecting the environment and nutritious food, which is exactly what we do, but we don't use it in that same language. And I think the more we can be loud and proud, like Paul says, and really speak in that language of what people understand, then I think we can drive it forward. But those perceptions of the careers influencers are really holding people back. When we have excellent on-farm children initiatives, they get all excited, but as soon as they go back to someone and say career in farming, they get held back. So those pathways are really important, and that's one of the things we've got on our platform.
Thank you. Thanks, Tess. And Andrew Palmer, how effective are things like, or how important indeed are things like apprenticeships, internships, training partnerships, or all of those kind of things in attracting a potential employee, making yourself attractive?
Yeah, they're all very important. They're very important, and a lot of employers will be paying into apprenticeship levies and things like that, and some of them don't know how to access it as well. So there's a lot of work still to do around that as well. And sometimes you can still access the levy fund even if you don't pay into it, sort of thing. So there's a lot of work, a lot of conversations, a lot of comms still needed around that sort of thing. But going back to the training and stuff with what Tess was saying, a lot of people who, when you come to interview people now, they want to see that at the interview. They want to see that career path. The old days, we'll make sure you're settled in for 3 or 4 months, 6 months, then we'll talk about training. They want to see it, want to see that progression, because you're trying to sell your industry or that position to that person. And if it doesn't look very attractive, as in there's no training career, there's no progression or anything like that, they're going to think, well, this is there's nothing here for me, sort of thing. And it goes back to that selling our industry, selling our career sort of thing. We do have a very good industry. We have very good career progression, as Tess says. It's fast moving in some of the respective livestock industries as well, sort of thing. So yes, it is. And all the other work that colleges do as well. Certainly, some of what I'm hearing now, some of the full-time courses now, young students are doing part-time work on weekends and stuff like that, on holidays and things like that. It all adds to the building the story, building the reputation and everything, and attracting the industry, because them young people will talk to their mates who maybe not interested in farming or don't know about farming, sort of thing. So it's all that bigger picture stuff.
Thank you. And Karen, from what you were saying, Paul, I'll come to you in a minute, but Karen, this sort of teamwork ethos that you've built with your business, that's going to be really important. I guess it's also going to buck the idea that working on a farm can be quite isolating. You've got a really strong team where you are.
Yeah, we do. So we work very much in teams. So we have a milking team, then we'll have a feeding team, a yard team, a calf rearing team. People work within one another's teams and help out, but that sort of gels those people, and it gives people that sort of authenticity and responsibility. So the feeding team, that's their thing and they own that. So they have their own department and they have sort of WhatsApp groups about their feeding, and the vets on that team, that WhatsApp group. So we do a lot of that, and it just gives people that ownership. So nobody's sort of wandering around doing a bit of this and a bit of that. They've got their own little parts of the business that they're responsible for. And then we find people work together, but we do lots of things that sort of integrates everybody. So we have things like something called a titty bar, which should probably be a tiki bar. I don't know. But Tom invented that name, of course he did. And that's where sort of on a Friday night, everybody gets together after work and we have a beer. And the fridge is always stocked. So it's out in the garden by my office. The fridge is always stocked. And then we find every now and again, some of the staff will carry in some beers to put in there. It's not always Tom and I stocking it. We do Cream Cake Friday, where we all get together before the afternoon milking and have some cream cakes, and that'll be to just talk about something or celebrate something. And then we always have a toast to the cows, because we say thank you to them because they pay for everything. So that builds that sort of respect to the animals. And then we have a masseuse every Wednesday, a sports therapist lady in the village. and she is booked for 5 o'clock every Wednesday. So whoever has the most aches and pains on that day gets to go. So you find on a Tuesday, lots of people start limping or holding their arm or something. So
I think I want to go and work at Karen's.
I think we're all probably thinking the same thing. So I mean, we're straying a little bit into retention, which we will dive into in more depth in a little bit. But that is all about making your business really attractive. You've got something to offer potential employees when they're looking to come for a job, or considering somebody else. You've made your business really an attractive place to work with lots of employee benefits. And I guess, Paul, that this is the sort of stuff that people in the modern age expect. This is not doffing your cap and collecting your wage on a Friday in a brown envelope. But people expect a lot more than that. You've got to make your business an attractive place.
Yeah, and I think the reason I put my hand up is that, and I hope this is okay, but I wanted to bring a bit of a dose of realism into the conversation that we're having, because I mean, I talk about Karen and Tom's farm a lot to other people. She's a shining example of what's achievable, but I think we've got to be realistic as well. And as a farming community, we're talking about how do we attract people into our industry as a business that works with farmers every single day. Before you get a masseuse, get a working toilet. Before you start giving people, cream cakes, think about your working hours and how much you're expecting people to do. So we've got a lot to do. I think we need to be realistic about where we are as an industry as well. Karen and Tom are really a shining light. That's why they win awards, because they are doing so many things correctly. I know Karen would say no farm is perfect, but that's the aspirational piece. But before you get there, you've got to think about, well, if I'm going to work with you and my choice is working on a farm today or working in Tesco's or Costa Coffee, at least I can go to the loo. If I haven't even got a working toilet on the farm, or when I go there and I'm a female, there's not even a seat for me to sit on. We've got a lot of work to do. So I don't want to make this, for me anyway, listening to the webinar, I don't want people out there to think it's wonderful and everything's great out there, because quite frankly, it isn't. We've got a lot of work to do as an industry to attract people into it. And yes, we've got some great farms that are doing great work, but we also do need to look at the basics of working hours, working conditions. We have one of the most appalling health and safety records in all of the professions out there. So if I'm a parent thinking, where do I want my students to go and work? One of the reasons they won't choose farming is because of the health and safety record. So let's get real and say, if we're going to attract people into the industry, let's deal with some of the stuff that's under our control as farmers, not stuff that DEFRA or the government or whatever doing, things that we can do. And where Karen and Tom are such a positive force is they're doing some of those basic things right as well. So you can't do the great things if you're not doing the basic things. That's one of the things I talk about a lot. There's a Maslow's hierarchy of needs here in terms of health and safety, decent PPE, a safe working environment. Then you can start worrying about whether you want to get people together. But let's make it a safe, pleasant place to work first. So I hope that's not negative. It's just trying to be real in a webinar like this, rather than just suggesting that we're perfect, because we really aren't. We've got a lot of work to do to attract people into the industry. I don't know what other people feel about that, but I just wanted to bring a bit of a dose of realism into the conversation as well.
So you're telling me that these midweek massages are the exception, not the rule, then on farms.
Yes.
Would anybody else like to come in on this? Because I'm going to move it on, not to retention, but I've got one more sort of topic area that I'd just like to discuss before we do move it on. But would anybody like to comment at all on what Paul said?
I think on something that you said earlier there, Johan, about doffing your cap, I think that is something that we need to realize as an industry that the demographic is changing.
Yes.
Between now and 2050, there's going to be 5% less people between 16 and 30 in the workforce. So it's going to be a different workforce, and the expectations are going to be different. So just doing stuff the way we used to do it, and that's the way we grew up, and you work as I tell you to work, and we need to get our mind around that and that bit about and thinking about why would you want to come and work for me. So I think that's an important thing to really face into that, and we need to change how we employ people and get our head around. And some people are doing it already, and they are they've got queues of people wanting to work on those farms.
Thanks, Isaac. Thank you, Karen. I think you put your hand up.
Yeah, only just to sort of say that, yeah, it is all about getting the basics right. And I always feel that I want a yard that I want to go onto in the morning and look forward at, it's hard enough to get up at 4 and get onto that yard in the morning. So when I walk out of those back gates, I want to feel good about where I'm working and the environment I work in. So I suppose I've already set that environment, probably selfishly for my own benefit as much as anything else. And the same down to the toilet. I have a lot of female staff. So I have sanitary towels in the toilet, in a cupboard. There's Tampax there. There's all sorts of things. There's deodorant. So it's just going that little extra mile that a lot of people probably don't think is important. But for females working on a farm, that is hugely important. And it's something we need to talk about. And I know Paul talks about it, and I know I talk about it when I do a lot of talks or talk at conferences. And I do see a few male farmers in the room go, well, she said Tampax. We can't be scared of saying Tampax if we're employing females on a farm.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. The question I wanted to sort of ask was, or at least touch on and give people a chance to talk about, was we've spoken about recruiting from the local community. We've spoken about recruiting sort of a little bit further afield in terms of non-farming UK staff. The question I wanted to sort of just touch on was, should farms be recruiting from abroad? How does that offer an opportunity? And that has done in the past with the dairy sector and continues to do so in sort of other sectors. Alex, is this something that you could talk about or address? How big is that pool that we should be looking at? We mentioned social media being a global, having global reach.
Yeah, well, I want to say a couple of things about that. I think, some of the things that Paul and Karen are discussing there, particularly with regard to that sense of belonging, which I think is a word that we haven't used, but, belonging might sound like, Pizza Friday and those types of things are absolutely amazing. But what Karen's creating, I think, from her business is something that feels like everybody is part of something. And I think that comes with it some inclusivity. And we did a piece of work, or rather my colleague, Dr. Claire Toogood, did a year or two ago, which looked very specifically, supported by the Farmers Charitable Trust, at this very topic. And among many other conclusions that Claire came to, one of the ones that really stuck out for me was how you can create that sense of belonging for your employees, but also putting into place practical mentoring programs, which sort of speaks to what Paul is talking about with regard to progression and how you can move on. And it's incredible how many businesses, not just farm businesses, will overlook those kinds of things. And then to come back to your original question, I think thinking about the inclusivity on farm, we did a piece of work really, really recently with Nuffield, and which looks specifically and also in partnership with Thebe about how we could bring diversity into our farm businesses and how we welcome people from different backgrounds into our farm businesses and empower our colleagues to feel comfortable with how they talk to those people, involve them, give them the sense of belonging. So I think there are really great opportunities, and it really comes back to our original point, which was about how do we do the outreach work for our industry? Traditionally, we're not particularly good at recruiting people that aren't from farming backgrounds, but I think we can be better, and I think there is a way forward for us to be better, and that comes from having platforms like TIA, having products like the inclusivity course that we developed with Nuffield to bring people into our industry to realize that it can be really exciting, really vibrant, and really rewarding career.
Thanks, Alex. Tess, that's something that you're working on increasingly, yes?
Yeah, making it a successful career. I think we need the right labour at the right time, and that doesn't always come from the domestic labour force. And I think that's something that we just have to live with. I know government policy is that we use more domestic labour, but when we haven't got people coming forward because we haven't been shouting about how good we are and what we offer, then that requirement for people to come in is there and important. But I think the more we can be, it's okay attracting people into the industry, but if we don't manage them properly, and I know we're slipping back into the retention again, but they're so interlinked. If we're not managing people, it doesn't matter how good the recruitment process is or how many people we convert into being agriculturalists, they're going to leave again. So I think we have to get our own house in order as an industry, and as being able to manage people and being able to offer those progression opportunities before we can really start to see a big difference. I think that's the key to changing all of this.
Well, let's sort of move on to retention, because it is, like you say, Tess, they are really, really closely linked. And I guess, having gone to all of the trouble of recruiting somebody and getting that right person, you don't want to lose them again, because retention is it's the other side of the same coin, isn't it? You're going to be wanting to retain people by providing all of the benefits that you've promised them, and you don't want to lose them out of disappointment, because you'll be back to square one and having to recruit again, and then that has all sorts of reputational implications as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's various figures out there, but one figure that stuck in my mind is people say it's about 18 months of that salary that you will waste during a recruitment process. And that's not just the fees of hiring someone like Paul to bring them in. It's that downtime of getting somebody upskilled, upskilling them, getting them really up to speed in your business. So it's really crucial that when we do get people, we can keep them for as long as possible. That doesn't mean that we keep them forever. I think it's really important that we have to accept as an industry to let people move on as well. I think that's another blocker that we have in the industry, and we worry about people. And there's the age old, I'm not going to train people because they'll leave me. But I think my answer to that, and probably those around the table, is if you don't train them, they stay. And is that what you really want in your business? So I think there's lots of this about, well, I don't want to get rid of them, or I can't get rid of them because I need somebody. We need to be really up in that management skills so that we can get the right retention for the right people.
It's almost a badge of honor that you've done a good job if they go on and progress and go on to something bigger.
Absolutely.
Bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Andrew, what are your thoughts on this? People, good farm workers do leave, don't they? And
they do. Yeah, they do. And Tess is quite right in by saying, if someone is moving on to progress their career, then you can say, and you can't offer them anything more on your farm. You've got to say, well, I've done a good job there, sort of thing. Like, if they're leaving for the wrong reasons, whether it's the culture or something on the farm, then you've got to really look at yourself. But if they are generally done as far as they can on your farm, and they are moving on to progress their own career, and surely it should be seen as a success, sort of thing. And everyone should part on good terms, sort of thing. But when people leave for the wrong reasons, you really need to look at yourself as a business. It could be the culture, it could be the team, it could be the farm, or anything, sort of thing. Like, and I just like to just drift a little bit back. I think farming's also got a unique opportunity here, because we saw it post-COVID, where there's a lot of people changing the careers, second careers later on in their life, sort of thing. And farming is in a real good place to offer them places. Karen's already talked about these various teams that come in and help with milking at different times of the day and things like that. And we're seeing farms doing that now, sort of thing, where they've got, they'll just come and do 10 or 15 hours a week, and it takes that pressure off, but it's also spreading the risk of having just call half a dozen people who working flat out all the time. So they've expanded the team by maybe 10 to 15%, but it's taking the workload off that core of people that you rely on all the time, sort of thing.
Thank you. And Isaac, I guess a lot of this comes back to what you were talking about earlier on in terms of leadership and things like that.
100%. There's a good bit of work that's come out of New Zealand in a report called The State of Leadership Development in New Zealand. And it shows that from every 10 people that's recruited from, whether that is from other industries, from youngsters, from wherever, within 3 years, we've lost 70% of that. So only 3 out of 10, so they're still in the industry. And out of that, so one person would have moved to a different farm. So, so if you employing 10 people, you've only got to send 2 left of them, and the same people after 3 years. That's scary. We do need to get better at that, and that is exactly. So there's some research that show that farmers that are more in tune with people, that's got a better teamwork ethics, can set a vision, can be up to 6 times more profitable. So, and 6 times more profitable if you can, provide all of this. That's a huge, amount of money on the table. So, if you can, be better setting strategy, be a better manager, keep your people. So that's exactly what we try to achieve by better leadership, better management, and it is a learnable skill. It's not, and you're not born with it or not. So it is something that we can learn, which is the good news.
So, thank you. I mean, people do say that money talks. We know as an industry, margins can be tight. It's not all about how much you pay, though, Paul, is it? There are non-monetary factors that will have a big influence on your retention rate, and things like housing, flexibility, holidays, etc., and even the loo on the seat on the loo that you were talking about earlier on.
Yeah, I think again I'm going to feel a bit like I'm being Mr. Miserable, but there's a dose of realism we need again here, and Isaac just touched on it. Really, is that because obviously we're doing this every day, and when we ask people why are they leaving the industry, which is why they're not being retained, it is down to management. It's not actually the poor housing, the working hours. Those are things that contribute to it. But ultimately, it's a lack of management skills, or particularly the way people are spoken to. So again, the numbers that Isaac just quoted are really important for people to recognise. But we also have to be real that most people who are in agriculture, who are running farms, are in agriculture because they love agriculture, not because they love managing people. And what we've got incredible technical skills in all aspects of agriculture, in terms of growing crops, managing livestock. That's what the job is seen to be. And we don't actually train people, which is why things like TIA is so important, because the leadership programs that Isaac runs, because we've got to teach these skills. Isaac's absolutely right. It's a learnable skill. And yet for many people who are running farms, they're not really that interested in it. Not as a criticism. They really are interested in their cows. They're interested in their land. They're interested in their machinery. So I think we've got to accept the fact, and farmers listening have got to say, right, if I want to keep people, in the same way as I've learned my technical skills, just as Isaac's just said, I need to learn my people management skills, because that is the main reason. And I could give you the stats. It's about 98% of people we ask say the main reason they're leaving is not because of the things that are not right about the farm itself. I can't work with either the person I'm working with, or more primarily the way the boss speaks to me, or the way the place is managed. So if we can start to say, let's learn some of those skills, because they're great. They're life transferable skills as well. Let's get on the Agri Leader program. Let's go and attend some of these workshops that AHDB are running. Let's have a little look at the TIA website and see if there's things I can learn from that. And then we can start, I think, to really deal with retention, which is how we manage people on the farm.
Thank you, Tess. The TIA has come up with a number of answers to these questions. You do offer resources, training, access for people working in agriculture and horticulture, obviously, but at all levels. This isn't just about managers. This is about farm workers, employees, as well as employers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything is everybody can learn, everybody can develop, and I think that's important for keeping people. We've had in the past people saying, I want to learn about this training that you've got on to offer when I was at HDB. Why is that? Well, because all my staff are leaving to my neighbour because they offer training. So it's there for everybody, and the next generation are definitely asking for more of it as well as they come through. But on our platform, we have what we call our essential skills, which are real basic modules, but around health and safety, biosecurity, to get people started. But we have got that farm finances, we've got succession on there, just so that people can find out a little bit of information and then go and speak to a professional, so that when they have that conversation, they're a lot more knowledgeable about it and they can get more out of that professional's time. So there's lots of other information as well, links through to various different sources. So really our platform just brings together an awful lot of information, because we know farmers are very time poor, and this puts it all into one section for them. But the really important thing as well is it records it all for them, and it records what their staff do or what they do. And then if they get any assurance visits or anything, there's a really simple record for them. But it just demonstrates how much work people are doing, because farmers are learning all the time. But I think, like you say, it's very technical focused, or it's compliance focused. And our research says less than 35% of people have any management training when they're running a business. And that's probably largely due to the generational nature of the industry. But as we see bigger farms, bigger businesses, you see that those skills become more and more important. And even if you're not, we get a lot of people say, well, I don't manage anybody, but you're managing an awful lot of people that support your business. And that's actually even more vital, that you can communicate and negotiate and work with those people as well. So it's important whatever size of business you've got.
Thank you. And Andrew, you also offer, but similar but different, a slightly different focus.
Yeah. I'm just going to come in there. If we put the staff retention to a farm KPI like we do with sheep or dairy or pigs and things like that, and staff retention became a KPI number on a farm business account, it would probably shake one or two people, sort of thing. A cost. Bigger businesses, are outside agriculture. They have a staff retention KPI that is up to date every month, sort of thing. Like, if we talked about that professionalism early on, sort of thing. Like, it would be a number that would start to frighten one or two people, sort of thing. And we're always advertising. If we put a number to that, and your staff retention rate is only 35% in pounds, shilling, and pence, all of a sudden it focuses demand a little bit for this manager training, for looking after the farm and things like that. But yeah, going back to what you asked, regards to the foundation skills and qualifications, we do a lot of that, but that's only part of it. You still need the people skills as well as part, on contributing to all them foundation skills that we offer as well, sort of thing. So yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to move it on a little bit to talk about other sort of non-monetary benefits, I guess, that employees can. That employers can provide employees, and our industry is it's unusual in that you'll often get the offer of a tied house with a job. But equally, some employees might not want that. They would rather be able to live a little bit further away, build up their own mortgage, etc., etc., etc. Paul, how do we sort of view these things? How should we view these things? I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes we live and breathe the business that we have a stake in ourselves, but our employees might feel a little bit less, well, understandably less attached. They've got less skin in the game than the farmer themselves might have. But that may not be a bad thing, right?
Yeah, I think we've got to be flexible. I think certain jobs that we need an employee to be on the farm, and therefore we provide accommodation for them. But not everybody does. That's why I talked about more part-time work. What Karen was talking about, her local rugby team, she hasn't got to house those because they're all local. So if we use local people, and I think one of the solutions we've got to our challenges are more local part-time staff that you don't need to house. But when you are looking to keep somebody, a tied house can be a hugely beneficial part of the job. I mean, often it's undervalued, actually. People don't realize just the value of having a house paid for by an employer. I mean, people outside of farming would probably bite your hand off and say, what, you're going to pay for my rent and mortgage for the next 20 years? Wow, that's incredible. But then for other people, as you say, Helen, that might not be that important. It might be time off. It might be, I want to play rugby at the weekends. I don't want to be here till 10 o'clock at night. It's about talking to the team and finding out what's important to them. Every member of staff has what's important for me printed on their forehead, make me feel important almost. And just having a conversation as to what is it that's going to motivate you? Is it money? Money, generally speaking, is pretty low down the list. It's often things like time with family, it's being recognized, it's the training and development, it's the safe working conditions, and then the housing becomes a bonus. But we should be loud and proud about that as well. If we are going to offer people accommodation, let's make sure they understand the value of that when they're comparing salaries, for instance. So, somebody who's currently 21, the minimum wage for someone who's 21 is 35 grand a year if they're doing a typical farming job in our industry. And we're going to give you a house. So at 21, you could be earning £50,000 equivalent. If you're working the typical type of hours, which we do need to reduce, but the typical sort of hours that a farm would expect you to work. So it's actually a very lucrative profession as well. And we shouldn't be frightened to say that. But I think the point is to talk to people and find out what motivates them. And then the little things that Karen does and Tom do from a, Cream Cake Friday, people listening might dismiss those things as flippant or not that important. It's the psychological impact of that that's important. It's what it's saying about the employer feeling about their staff that's important. It's not the physical cream cake or the bottle of beer. It's the fact that employee feels valued, appreciated. They're constantly saying thank you. Whereas I do have farmers that occasionally say to me, well, why should I say thank you? That's what the salary's for. well, don't expect people to be motivated if you're only just saying, because then what they'll do, then they'll point out everything they're doing wrong, but not point out what they're doing right. So recognition is important. A simple thank you, a bit of appreciation. Those are the sort of things that are going to keep people working for you, alongside potentially providing them with a property and a garden and somewhere to keep the dogs, chickens and rabbits.
In a moment, Karen, I'm going to come to you, but Isaac, I get a sense is itching to come in on this and say something. I hope I'm right, Isaac.
I was just going to reiterate what Paul was saying there of not assuming. So on the labour life cycle, we've got some case studies, and one of the case study farmers thought, well, we small farm business. People want big tractors, all the shiny machinery, but actually, a lot of the employees value that family feel. So it's never assume some people might want to drive big tractors, shiny tractors. That's important for them, but you don't assume that is what people want. So yeah, ask them.
Thank you very much. Karen, there's a question here from Ben Martin who says one of the biggest benefits he's seeing firsthand is the ability of an employer to be flexible with working hours. I know Ben a little bit from Cambridgeshire. He says, I appreciate it's probably easier to be flexible on an arable farm than with livestock, but it's still not impossible. I've had 2 recruitment clients now, both arable farmers that support 4-day weeks in slower periods of the year. And Ben says he wonders if the panel have any other good ideas when it comes to the flexibility of working hours. I know you can't really do dairy cows on a 4-day week, Karen, but in terms of flexibility, how do you ensure that people, that you meet the needs of your employees? You've spoken about teams and stuff like that, but I'm just interested to sort of find out a little bit more. And after you, I'm going to go to Alex and see if he's got some ideas as well.
Okay, yeah. Well, just before I talk about flexibility, I just want to say never underestimate the power of saying good morning to everybody, no matter how rubbish you feel when you get on that yard in the morning. I'm full of cold at the moment, but every morning I walk in and go, morning, everybody. That's how I want to start the day, and that's a good start to the day. And then also at night, no matter what's happened, and even if somebody has done the most major cock up, I will still say goodbye and thank you to them at the end of that day. We finish on a positive, and it's about making people feel appreciated. That is massive, and that's what everybody comes to. They just want to feel appreciated. Going to the flexibility, because we milk 3 times a day. So I have some people that come in and just milk in the morning because that really suits them. I have a lady who's actually a lettings manager in an estate agent's, and she loves cows and she's worked on a farm before. She comes and milks at 4:30 on Tuesday and Thursday morning. She's done by 8:30. She's gone home, showered, and she's in her office by 9:30. And that helps her to keep her handy with the cows, but she can still run her lettings agency. She loves doing that. I have people that maybe I've got a couple of people at uni, and so they come and milk every other weekend. So I've got a vet student who now brings her friend with her, and he's training to be a doctor. So they do every other weekend milkings. It's just giving, and people that do nights and only do nights. There's a guy I've got who delivers beds in the day, and does milkings at night. So it's about just creating. So if you can get enough people, you can give out the shifts that they want. And we're actually in a position now where we've got too many people. So we're actually persuading a friend of ours to go 3 times a day milking because we can staff it for him. So between us and his 2 units, we can create like a pool of staff for all of us.
Good. It sounds like everybody in Cheshire works for you one way or another.
Yeah, why not? But they're not all from farming backgrounds as well. That's a huge key to it. Is, I find it so much easier to train people than untrain them. So to get rid of people's habits that probably don't fit my business is really hard. So to get people with no background is fantastic, because I can train them to exactly how I want them to do something in the way we do it. And also listening to people's ideas, because people that don't come from farming backgrounds have such great ideas of what to do in our industry. So sometimes when people come and say, we have a team meeting, so we do that as well. We have team meetings and then we'll ask them for their ideas. And some of them might sound really stupid, but we'll still go with that idea sometimes, even if it fails, because we can go, there we go, we tried that and it did fail, but that's how we've learned. We learn from failing, don't we? So not to be afraid to listen to people's ideas and try them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know we're getting towards the end, but I just want to just say one quick thing about people listening to Karen. One of the absolute keys to recruitment and retention is mindset. Is how we look at staff and how we think about staff. Are they a problem or our biggest opportunity? Are they our biggest asset or their biggest pain in the backside? How we think about our teams defines whether you're going to be attractive to work for and I'm going to want to stay to work for you. So hopefully those listening today or watching are hearing Karen, and you can say that's a mindset shift that we need. So I think my final point almost is change your mindset. That's the key. If we change up and right through to let's talk about our industry positively. Let's get out on social media. Let's start being positive. There's been a lot of negative media around what's been going on government-wise and things like that. But let's put a positive message out about the industry if we're going to retain and recruit staff and have the mindset that people are our asset, not our biggest difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Paul. I'm going to come to you in a moment, Isaac, but I did say I was going to go to Alex first or after Karen. Alex, in terms of flexibility, any hints and tips? Or you're on mute.
Very sorry. We almost got through the entire webinar without somebody doing that. So congratulations to me. I think that there are two words I wanted to use, and they are trust and fear. And I think quite often, our farm businesses, of course, we fear our teams making errors. We don't embrace mistakes. So I was particularly excited to hear Karen talking about failure being a real great measure of success when we're talking about how our teams perform, because I think that's absolutely vital, and it's something we really don't lean into enough. And actually, the power of trusting people, if our goal is to get them to stay, is really crucial, because if we're able to say, hey, look, we that didn't go to plan, so what are we going to do next time? And the power of that, in terms of what that can actually offer to the individual, in terms of that feeling of safety and trust, is enormous. They go home, they say, do you know what? I did this thing today. It didn't work out, but you know what? My boss didn't throw me over the hot coals. Actually, we just learned and we're going to do something differently. So I think the flexibility that exists in good management there. When you talk about recognition and fair compensation, all those kinds of things, none of that really matters unless the person wants to be there. And a lot of that comes from that trust and safety in the workplace.
Thanks, Alex. I almost made it through the webinar without somebody's email pinging in. So sorry about that. That was me. Isaac, your thoughts, please.
So my thing was just what Paul was saying. That it was Maya Angelou that said, people will remember everything else you've done, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. People never forget how you made them feel, and that whole mindset thing is, and it comes through in your body language, in your tone of voice, your eyes, and we give so much away with that. So so I was just agreeing with that, and rather than putting my hand up.
So I think I'm going to go to sort of final thoughts and take-home messages. I know, Paul, that you've sort of more or less said yours, but I'm going to come to yours you at the end. But starting with Andrew and then Tess, I mean, if there's sort of one take-home message that you would like people to go away with, Andrew, what would it be in terms of recruiting and retaining the best staff?
I think there's so many great comments have happened tonight, but there's a saying, and I can never remember where I heard it from, but we touched about it earlier on. Train people so they can leave, but treat them so they don't want to, and that echoes a lot of the work Karen does, sort of thing. Like, don't be afraid of training people because it keeps them interested, but then them extra things, that's the thing that makes a difference to your business and makes people want to stay, sort of thing. So that would be mine, sort of thing. Just a simple thing like that, and a lot of it is it starts with a good morning in the morning. It starts with, oh, well, what was your idea? How would you do it? Let's have a go at it, and all that sort of thing. Make them feel involved, sort of thing, like, you know. And then, and as we said at the top of the webinar sort of thing with Paul, your working hours, your working patterns, and things like that, your basics on the farm and stuff like that. You know, if you have to bring something, bring someone else in, a good friend or a third party, just to review all that on your farm, because sometimes you've got the blinkers on, you just see the normal sort of thing, you see it as norm. So yeah, if you've got this, as I mentioned earlier on, this low KPI of staff retention, well, let's start looking at it, because if it was a production issue with your farm, you'd certainly be calling experts in to help you out with it.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Tess, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, and I think it echoes around the room, your people are your most important asset, and we invest in everything else that we have on farm. We invest in the stock, the kit, but we don't necessarily invest in people. And I think if we could look at people in that same way as an investment, actually, while times are tough, training your own staff and keeping your own staff happy is probably the key to surviving through to the next cycle. And so I think looking at yourself, looking at your business and what you've got to offer, and always looking to improve. Karen won't be just happy that she's got a masseur and her cream cake. She's looking at what the next thing is. So whatever level you're starting at, there's always room for improvement if you look at yourself and reflect.
Thank you. Thanks, Tess. Isaac, I'm going to go to you next.
So my take-home message would be to remember it is a learnable skill. And there is actually so much resources out there, TIAS and Labour Lifecycle, AgriLeader. In fact, RACE has done an amazing job of summarizing a bunch of Nuffield reports on different topics. And one of them is recruiting and retaining great people in farming and agribusiness. So, so go and find those resources. And remember, there's money on the table. We think of this as the fluffy stuff, as the nice to haves. It's not. There's, some recruiting and retaining people better, then will make you more money. So remember that it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. So yeah, it's not part of the business anymore. It is the business. This is one of the most important jobs on the farm, is how you manage your people. Thanks,
Isaac. Alex, you?
Well, I think I really like a quote, Johan, which is a good boss is a good teacher. And I think that really rings true for me. Every boss I've ever had has been a great teacher. It's not skill everyone possesses, but as Isaac says, I think it's something that everybody can learn.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Karen and then Paul.
I would say don't be afraid to invest in self-development. It does start with you as a manager or a leader or a business owner. And appreciate people, and also don't go away from this webinar thinking everything's perfect for me, because it's not. It does go wrong. In the real world, I call it wrong sometimes, but I learn from that. And also, people can be with me for a very long time and then suddenly don't fit for whatever reason going in on their personal lives. And at some point, I can be very good at recruiting, but I'm blooming brilliant at firing as well. When it goes wrong, I'm good at moving people on, as well as them might wanting to move on themselves. So it isn't always perfect, but again, we deal with those situations, we learn from them, and we move forward. But just appreciate people. We can't do it without them.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Thank you. Paul.
Thank you, and I'm honoured to get almost the final say, but I suppose it's quite appropriate when we listen to a webinar. My final piece of advice is be careful who you listen to. We are an echo chamber in agriculture, and often we will spend time together with fellow farmers, and sometimes we can be careful, we can be in danger of going to the lowest common denominator. So, get on the AgriLeader program, listen to people who are making waves in the industry, and particularly listen to people from outside the industry. That's what Karen said before. Sometimes we think we haven't got a solution to a problem where someone outside the industry does. So there are solutions to the challenges that we face. There are people right now making a real success of this. So we've got to make sure that we're talking ourselves up again, that we're not talking ourselves down into a doom and gloom. There are solutions to the labour challenges. There are farms that are doing a really good job of it. Listen to those people. ring them up, go and see them, talk to them, come to some of the events that HDB run, where you'll meet people who are the movers and shakers, the people that are making the positive moves in the industry. So be careful who you listen to the right people, would be my final message.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks everybody. People, I think, well, as everybody said, but Tess and Karen in particular, people have been the most important assets for any farm business. That's about it for this Farmers Weekly Transition webinar. You will be able to view it again. It will go on the Farmers Weekly Transition website, which is at fwi.co.uk/transition. I'm just going to thank everybody and go through and say thank you. So Isaac Van Heerden from AHDB, Tess Howe from TIER, Alex Hardy from the School of Sustainable Food and Farming at Harper Adams University, Paul Harris from Recruitment Consultants Real Success, Karen Horton, Cheshire Dairy Farmer, and Andrew Palmer from Lantra. Thank you very much for making this such an enlightening and uplifting webinar on how to recruit and retain the best farm staff. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody listening found it useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.